Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Truth Wanted Season 6 episode. I don't even know. We've been doing a lot of these, but we're back, baby. It's 2023. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can do that. We have open phone lines right now, so we are ready to take your calls. It is 512-991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And of course, every single week I always try to have a special guest. This week is no different. It is Skeptic Nikki, aka Nikki Beat the Cult. Nikki, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Hi Dan, how are you?
I am doing great. I got, in case folks at home haven't noticed, a new microphone, okay, because so many of you at home complain about some audio issues that happened that is not the fault of the crew most of the time. Probably my fault, but that's okay. We got a new microphone, trying it out today. We're going to see how it works. I think I sound buttery smooth, so, we'll see. But Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for having me. This is a dream come true. I love the ACA.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. Nikki, you are a Twitter power user, is how I would describe you. You tweet every day, more than once a day, I think.
Unfortunately, yes.
You're a Twitter activist, really, is how I would describe you. You recently are trying to get into some more YouTube stuff. I contacted you and was like, hey, you want to be on the show. Make your video debut, which not really, because you actually already got one of your podcasts out, which your first episode featured me on, which thank you so much for that.
It did. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
But I was just happy that you got more into the space, because you have a great presence on Twitter, and you're just a very funny person. So let's talk about you, Nikki. Who are you? Why are you here, Nikki? What are you doing in this space? What's your dealio? What's your background?
So I was in the space about 10 years ago, a little bit less than 10 years ago, as Skeptic Nikki at first, and was just getting into kind of the atheist realm. I had just realized that I did not believe in God at all. I had deconverted from Christianity around like my mid-20s, like 23, 24, but around 26, 27, I became an atheist and became very outspoken about it, and jumped on Twitter initially, and kind of wrote it out there, and was going to a few conferences and doing a few panels at that time. But I wasn't really sure if I wanted to stay in the space, as it's pretty stigmatized, especially in the African-American community, to be an atheist. Religion is a very integral part of our culture, and it's pretty much mandatory to be not only religious, but a Christian, and involved in the church and aligning with Christian ideals. So I wasn't really sure if I wanted to kind of go into it full time. But eventually Twitter just kind of shut me down. So I took a break, came back a couple years later, a lot less angry, although by some of my posts you may not be able to tell. But I think that's fair.
Yeah,
it was much worse as Skeptic Nikki, though, much worse. But I came back and realized this is something I do want to start moving into. There are, I won't say virtually none, but there are very few atheist voices that are Black, even fewer that are female, and even fewer that are Black, female, and lesbian. So I am all of those combined with being an atheist. So I have a very important part to play in the atheist space, a very rare part. And I am happy to do that this time around. And I'm just working on getting on camera more. I did my first debate last night. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting to get better and just do some more. I would like to get into debating more.
Yeah.
So that's my focus. But
that's great. I want to talk more about your background, but I want to talk about something you just said too, which was you feel like obviously you are a minority, but also within the atheist space, you are an even more minor minority. Wait, major minor? I don't know how you say that. You're a unicorn amongst the atheist community, right? I mean, like, let's be real. Like the atheist community as a whole, as its representation in media, representation in conference spaces, representation in period.
Spaces, yeah.
It's been white dudes for the longest time, right?
Yes,
like and I will say, even since the time that I've been doing stuff, there have been a lot of panels and like conferences I've been to who have done a lot of work in trying to make sure that that's not the case, right? I've seen a lot more talks about diversity, a lot more talks about trying to integrate different cultural backgrounds and racial backgrounds into consideration when we talk about these issues, because being a Black Christian is not the same thing as being a white Christian. Funnily enough, not only just like culturally, but even theologically, there's interesting divides in the history there. More on that later. But while there is efforts being made, I mean, it's still pretty white. Like, it's still a pretty white space. And like, why do you think that is? What do you think is like the difference in a space like the atheist community versus like a Christian community, which has not only like spaces for Black people, has entire Black churches, right? It has entire congregations that are made up of these kinds of, these backgrounds.
Well, yes, you're right. The church is a central part of the African American community. It goes all the way back to slavery, obviously. Ever since then, African Americans have been heavily indoctrinated into the Christian church, especially a very Southern Baptist evangelical type of Christianity, as the Bible, predominantly Exodus and Leviticus and verses like that, were used to justify enslavement of African Americans at that time.
Yeah.
And after slavery was disbanded, African Americans were freed technically, but there were still a lot of systemic limitations and oppressions that limited and prevented African Americans from basically achieving the same level of success as whites, white people, Caucasians, however one would say it. And this led to a lot of, well, just to put it bluntly, stress. When you're extremely stressed and extremely limited in your resources and a lot more desperate, you need to look towards something larger than you that gives you a false sense of control. Hopefully, you would hope that it would give you a valid sense of control, but in this case, it's a false sense of control. And there's been an increased dependence on this new master, because the master was the one who was looking out for us on the plantation and providing everything at that time. So after we were freed, we were still dependent because we weren't given the skills or the property or the resources to succeed. So we just basically traded the slave master for the new master, who is Jesus or God, predominantly Jesus, of course. And there were a lot of efforts like Jim Crow and other efforts to keep African Americans subjugated, which have been extremely successful, moving from those into the increased incarceration rates and the lack of flexibility for African Americans who have committed crimes, as opposed to maybe white people who receive lesser sentences and more lenient punishments. And then the distribution of drugs in the inner city, and basically removing the Black man from the home, which has put more pressure on Black women. and made them the most impoverished demographic in the United States. And that has contributed to Black women being the most religious demographic in the United States as a result of this. And the church is pretty much the only institution in the African American community that hasn't been burned down or annihilated. And as a result, it is a centralized, it just has a very centralized purpose. So it's not just a religious aspect of being African American, it's a cultural aspect as well. So I know that was a lot, but to kind of pivot into the follow-up question about why more Caucasians are atheists. Well, there are atheism. So it's very interesting that you say that. I actually posted this tweet earlier this week, or maybe last week, or I don't know what week, but that atheism is a white man's disease. And that is, well, that's something that I've been told. I didn't come up with that. Yeah. But one thing that tends to contribute to a lack of religiosity, at least generally speaking, and of course there are always outliers, is an understanding of maybe a little bit more how the world works, a little more scientific, philosophical literacy. One thing that I've noticed when I talk to African Americans, but not just African Americans in their defense, but it typically is African Americans, just because I am an African American and I live in an African American city. Yeah. Probably the most in stereotypical, well, not stereotypical. I mean, I live in Atlanta, so it's Atlanta.
Known for being a Black city, right? Yeah. Having a strong Black presence. More so than other American cities. Yeah, for sure.
And it's a very successful, I mean, if you want to be African American and it's successful, you definitely want to live here. There are more Black millionaires, billionaires living in Atlanta than anywhere else. But even they have higher rates of religiosity than maybe the parallel white millionaire, billionaire. But one thing that I typically hear when people find out that I'm an atheist, is the very first question they ask me is, well, how did we get here? Where did all of this come from? Yeah. And there are answers to these questions, but we don't really have the best educational resources in the Black communities. We don't really have the most financial resource, like the best financial resources. We don't have a lot of generational wealth. We have less generational wealth now than ever. Right. So these contribute to that.
Yeah, I want to add on to that, because I think what you're saying is very critical when we talk about, I want to be as nuanced as possible when we talk about this particular subject, because there is a stereotype that is brought sometimes from the atheist community that says, oh, religious people are just stupid, right? Are cognitively deficient in some sort of way. But I would argue that atheism as a product in American culture relates more to your level of wealth than anything else.
Yes, because
it across the world, in America as well, but across the world, rates of poverty are correlated with religiosity, right? And again, that has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with material resources, right? And I can attest to this myself, right? I don't know if I'd be an atheist if I didn't go to college myself, right? So like I do think that like my education does inform me of my religious positions in a way that is a privilege that other people don't necessarily get to have. And of course, right, Black Americans have highest rates of poverty across the board when compared to other races. So I think it makes sense to kind of point to that, correlate a little bit to see, like the most impoverished communities are also going to be the most religious ones, right? Like that's a trend that's not just the United States, that happens worldwide. So I can see how the difference is. And here's a stat I want to show you here, okay? Amongst Black adults in the United States, okay, this is from Pew Research, a survey they did between 2019 and 2020. What percentage of Black adults, if you were to guess, would say that they believe in God or a higher power? What do you think that is, Nikki?
90%.
97%. 97%. Isn't that interesting? Now, that doesn't, of course, mean Christianity, right? This means higher power. The average for Americans is 90% across all adults. So again, not talking about Christianity, just talking about a higher power. And some other interesting facts here, too. evil spirits can harm, right? So this is a percent of U.S. adults who say this. Amongst regular adult or average adult population, I shouldn't say regular, right? Average adult population is 54%. Amongst Black adults, it's 73%, right?
Yeah,
It's almost 20%
that
increase there.
aligns
You
with my
know,
mom calling everybody demons, and yeah.
right. Well, like, and there's some other facts here too, but that also speaks to the kinds of spiritual traditions that happen in Black churches. Is also particularly in different kind of camp of theology, right? It's speaking in
Hmm.
tongues, for example. Here's another one. Across a percent of Americans at their service sometimes include speaking in tongues. 27% on average for the adult American, 52% in the Black church or amongst
100% in
Black
my
adults.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Another one, call and response in their services.
Mm,
76% amongst adults, 94% amongst Black adults. Uh,
yes,
so like
that goes
again,
back
there's
to slavery as well.
yeah, there's these spiritual traditions that the Black community, as a group,
Hmm.
you know, not being in the dominant power, right? When you're part of the subculture, even though you are Christian, they still weren't seen as equals, right? Like slaves
Still
were
not.
not going to churches with their
Yeah.
white masters, right? For the most part. So they have their own
No, no.
congregations, they have their
Hmm.
own interpretations of these texts, and as a result, not only different spiritual practices, but also different narratives, which I think that are gained, which is interesting. Like the story of Exodus, right? How much is that more talked about in the Black community when you go to a Black church? Like that's a story that's talked about because what is that story about? It's about people being freed from bondage, being freed from slaves. So anyway,
Yeah,
it's
and
an
talks about
interesting,
struggle and
yeah.
like the
There's
that's types of themes. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm going on a tangent here, but the point is there's interesting. It was a pathway. It was easier for me to become an atheist as a white person than it would be for a same person in the exact same situation but was Black. Like it's
Yes. And
I
as a
think
male
that's true
too.
across the board. Yeah, and as a man as well,
Yeah,
because it is a
absolutely.
space. This is space has predominantly been filled with dudes, right? Dudes that have
Hmm.
opinions and say stuff online. And like I don't want that to be the case. I want everybody,
I don't
whether it's
either.
atheism, okay, or if it's just being able to critically think about your religious upbringing or culture or background, whatever. I want that opportunity to be given to anybody, right,
Agreed.
regardless of their background. So like what can we do, Nikki? What do you, I mean, I know you've thought about this.
Oh,
Like
sure.
what do you think is the best way to kind of pave that path forward for people of color and people of different backgrounds that don't look like me, right? To kind of come into the space that we're in right now.
Hmm. That is an excellent question because religion in the Black community is like a genetic disease.
A
It's
genetic
some,
disease.
yeah, it is.
Interesting.
It's,
You've made some very strong comments in this show, Nikki. I did not expect you to go as hard as you have so far. I'll be honest, but you know,
well, it
I'm very
is.
curious to hear your perspective.
It's like a genetic disease.
Mm,
You're born with it,
mm,
and it is fought, it's cultured and fed and nourished as you age, and it's reinforced. The difference I feel, and that I feel, and I say that because that makes it very difficult for people to move away from it. Um, and in my head, it's very hard to provide this perspective to
mm.
others.
Yeah.
The people in my family, my mother, my father, my uncle's a megachurch pastor who actually is the least frustrating. Actually, my uncle's amazing. My uncle and my aunt are
Mm,
both incredible people, but um, you know, their friends, their family, my grandmother, my aunt's mom, she's very sweet. I was talking to her this past Christmas, and we were talking about my family because I actually cut off my parents and my sisters, even though I just saw my younger sister today. She dropped my brother off. I was talking to her. I said I have some issues, and she was like, "Well, you love God, and so you love them." And I was just looking at her, and I was like, "Oh, they obviously haven't told her I'm an atheist."
mm,
um, but basically, I'm thinking of all the people in my family when I go to the store, whenever I go to a group and I'm in acting class and it's a predominantly Black acting class, and it's talk about Jesus and poems about Jesus, and my salvation and my protector is Jesus, and it's, you know, and like I hear all these things. So it is like, it is so ingrained in the culture of being African American. It's very difficult to rip someone away, because you're not just leaving the church, you're leaving your family, you're leaving tradition, you're leaving your identity. Like, you're supposed to be a Christian. We believe in Jesus, honey. You better trust God, and you better like get on your knees and pray, because the devil is always out for you. And, you know, you need to have Jesus's angels protecting you, as they're always watching over you, and, you know, whatever. So that, I say that to say this isn't a very difficult thing. And I have, like, all of my friends are like, I don't know if that's even Black atheists, yeah, I have a lot of Black atheist friends, and we talk about this, and we have a lot of frustrations. And we don't know. For me, I guess it's being front and center. I want to get out more. Since my uncle and my aunt have provided me with this kind of unconditional love, knowing I'm a non-believer, an atheist, knowing I'm a lesbian, and my brother, who is a Christian, they love me unconditionally. It's really reinforced my efforts. So with their support, and I feel like I have some backing to get out and be who I want to be. So that's the first thing, I guess, is getting my face and others out there. I want to say education, but even highly educated African Americans still tend to be religious.
Sure. I think, you know, if I could speak, I mean, like, it's sometimes easier to identify the challenges than it is the solutions, right? And like, one of the challenges I'm thinking of is, you know, I'm trying to think of the reverse situation. What if I was maybe in your shoes, and I go to YouTube and I'm looking at other content creators, and I'm seeing only Black content creators talking about their experiences in the Black church and with Black Christianity. Like, I may not have been able to kind of figure out or relate some of those experiences, and maybe could think through some of the doubts I did, because I may not be able to relate to that person's experience. And I feel like that's probably a challenge for the Black community, right? If you see a lot of white content creators who are talking about their experiences with their faith groups and the challenges that, I mean, obviously there's similarities, right? There's going to be some places where you can connect the dots, but ultimately, like, it is, I think, on some level, a very different experience. So it's harder to kind of relate with that. So it's like, I think I try to do my part by having, of course, voices like yourself on this program to talk about some of these issues. And I encourage other content creators who are out there, of course, to let your minority voices, let the people in your community who do have those voices speak as much as possible. But also, like, I don't know, it's such a new thing. It's like, I feel like, well, who's the biggest Black atheist creator? I mean, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson was like a big voice, right? But it's like, as far as like folks that got the same level of notoriety as like the Christopher Hitchens or somebody, right? It's like, it's just those voices aren't really
That's
there.
not
I want to
who
change
the
that,
Black community is going to listen to. The Black community is not going to listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson. First of all, because they're not. If you want, okay, so there's two reasons. Number one, he's married to a white lady, so I don't have a problem with that.
Sure.
But
okay.
The number one, the most religious demographic in the country is the Black woman. And if you want to turn off a Black woman fast, show her a Black man married to a white woman. So that's,
oh my God.
It's the statistical. I'm actually, and it's interesting because this is a Black female atheist book club, but we're reading a book called Is Marriage for White People? And it has all these excellent statistics on that. And if a Black man, first of all, no more than around 50% of Black men graduate high school, which I did not know that. So that's a big problem, first of all. But there are higher rates of Black women graduating and going to college. So because so few Black men pursue education on higher levels, The ones that do are in high demand. So they know this. So they use that opportunity to marry white women and gain a status that they otherwise wouldn't have if they were a more stereotypical example. And this is the book, not me. I just want to be sure people aren't, it's not me saying this, but Black men and other races are more apt to marry outside of their race than Black women are. So with that being said, Black women are already fighting for such a small minority of eligible Black bachelors. So if you have one that's married to a white lady, they're not going to listen to you.
Interesting.
Second of all, he's a scientist. He's not an athlete or a music entertainer. So those are the two demographics of celebrities that the African American community was more likely to relate to. And this again isn't Nicole or whatever, Nikki. My name's Nicole. I don't care. This isn't me saying this. This is statistics. So and that's a problem because Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, Cardi, what do they say? Oh, I went to church and God loves me and I talked to my pastor. And this is not, this is Nikki. My pastor did this for me. So if you want to get the African American community to pay attention, you need to have an atheist celebrity who is an athlete or an actor or a rapper or a singer, and they are more likely to be religious because they're not that demographic is not the most educated. They usually come from an impoverished upbringing. Like Rihanna, very poor. Cardi, very poor. And I mean, in athletes, usually, that's the stereotype, like Shaquille O'Neal, single parent home, struggling, religious. So if you want to reach African Americans, you're going to have to provide them with like an atheist group or an outspoken atheist person, because like even Wu-Tang and like, I believe Arian Foster, they're non-believers or atheists, but that's not their message. And because if it was their message, they would lose support immediately.
That's a pretty interesting perspective. I wonder
statistics.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what statistics you're referring to when you're talking about that. But I don't know. I guess I think of like when Chris Pratt or when Justin Bieber say they're Christian, are people going to become more Christian because the celebrity is, what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yes.
I wonder if that works both ways, because it's like I wonder how much a celebrity influence would do something like that. I don't know, because like this is like, I think there's a difference too between like, well, I don't know. It's tough because
statistically, African Americans are more likely to make a buying decision if a celebrity is providing them with the influence. And this is so there's a doctor of finance. His name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. He used to be a professor at Syracuse and Ohio State, but he's very Afrocentric in his message, and that's not very popular with white outlets, which makes sense. If Obama was Afrocentric in his message, he wouldn't have been able to get the white vote. And because he had to represent everyone, and African Americans are only around 13% of the population. So if he came out saying, I'm for the Black people, reparations, like no one would have voted for him. So Boyce Watkins kind of had the same issue when he was teaching at Syracuse, teaching at Ohio State, and he was like on CNN. He was realizing he was kind of having to curb his message because of those who were supporting him. So he moved from being more front and center to his own platform. And he talks a lot about these statistics about how African Americans use their money, how we've lost a lot of generational wealth, and where our money is going to, because we have over $1 trillion of spending power every year, but that money is going to
outside the Black community.
Like, right.
Yeah.
But because even in our community, like we are, like Black women especially, our hair is a very lucrative business area. But if you go to the Black community, there's a ton of beauty supply stores, and 90% of them are owned by Asians. There's a ton of nail salons, but most of them are owned by Asians. In a lot of communities, like like Indian communities or even like some Jewish communities, Korean communities, their money bounces around 20 to 30 times before it exits the community. They have their own banks, their own stores, their own, like things like that. So he talks a lot about how we do not keep our money in our communities. Well, we don't really have very cohesive, unfortunately, communities. Like we have cities that we live in, but like Atlanta, but we don't have like a cohesive representation. So we don't really hold on to our money like we should. And he talks a lot about where our money goes. And entertainment is a really, not like it's not for others, but entertainment is a big kind of focus for us, which is fine. But because of that, and these are things that can be researched as well. I'm just talking about this from my perspective. It probably sounds a little bad that African Americans like rap and that stuff.
Well, I'm just shocked. That's a very like, if Nikki, you realize if I said that would be crazy. If I'm just shocked that I have no idea that was your perspective on it. I mean, I guess
it's statistics. Like, it's
I guess I've never heard that before. I never heard some of the stuff that you're talking about. Yeah, I have to look into it.
Yeah,
I have to see that.
Watkins, Dr. Claude Anderson. These are great educational minds in the Black community who are trying to initiate change. I don't know if Boyce Watkins is an atheist. The way he talks, he sounds like it, but of course, if he'd said it, he was, because most of the people who help him are religious. He would lose support. So, but I really like Dr. Boyce Watkins a lot, but he talks a lot about these statistics, and these are things that we have to deal with. We are not any less intelligent, any less talented. We just need a more enticing voice, and Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't going to be it.
Man, that's look, that's really funny. I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson for like completely different reasons, not because he married a white lady, but like that's
I have
really
no problem with him, but
yeah, I know you're joking when you say that, but that's
no, not for them. They will not be happy with that. I don't care, but that's definitely not a good thing.
That's it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna listen to you and right now and take that into consideration, because you're dropping some bombs on me right now that I have not even considered. But like, we are way over time for the interview portion right now. We got to get going on some calls. You ready to talk to some people, Nikki?
Oh, absolutely. I'm here for that.
Okay, great. Well, before we get to the calls, we have to thank the patron of the week, because every single week we always give a shout out to a patron on Patreon. Thank you to everybody, of course, that donates on the Patreon. But of course, we want to give a special shout out. And this week's patron of the week is going to be Zach Gunkel. Thank you so much, Zach Gunkel, for donating on Patreon. And of course, thank you to everybody that donates. You can go to the Patreon. I'll give a link to that later, but link to that is in the description. Thank you to everybody that donates to the show. And with that, let's just jump right into it, because I'm pushing it today. First show of the year. I'm getting my hosting pants on, and I'm like, I'm ready to go, because we this is a call-in show. We should talk to folks about the stuff that they want to talk about. We have some interesting calls so far. I'm not sure which one is going to be the best, but you know what? I'm going to talk to Tim, who's called into the show before. Tim, from Washington. You are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Tim. How's it going? Doing good. Nikki's dropping some truth bombs, and listen, making me uncomfortable. Okay, Nikki's saying some stuff. Oh man, you're saying some stuff. You're saying some wild stuff today, Nikki. I had no idea you had the perspective that you do. Yeah.
What perspective?
Just like you're just like I know. I guess I'm just shocked by we need rappers and athletes to do it. Like I have to look at the stuff you're talking about there, but I was just shocked. I was like, oh, that's wild, but
but it's true though.
Yeah, I mean,
it's definitely not my perspective. It's statistically
ready to drop a few things too.
Yeah, Tim, you're gonna drop some bombs on us too. Tim, lay it on me. What do you got?
Yeah. I am so excited about some of the representation for the LGBTQ community in media right now. I watched Strange World on Disney Plus, and the reason why was because I watched a video on YouTube about how the religious wrong are all up in arms about the fact that one of the main characters in that movie is a 16-year-old gay boy who has a crush on his friend. And so I watched it for that reason. It's like, I'm going to watch anything that's going to make the Christian wrong all up in arms. And I thought it was so sweet. It was handled so well. It was beautiful. The little flirtation scenes between the character and his crush were just drawn so cute, but that wasn't the focus of the movie. The focus of the movie was the adventure that he and his father and grandfather went on, right? And so it was so much fun to watch this kid who has a crush on his best friend just have an adventure with his parents and his grandfather. And the representation, it was as cool for me and sweet as Heartstopper on Netflix. And I'm so proud of Disney for doing this. And I'm sorry that it flopped in the box office. But I'm just excited about the fact that we are finally getting some cool representation where the I suppose the community isn't I guess treated horribly. The gay characters aren't tragic. They're not evil. They're just people.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's great.
Really.
Yeah, Tim, we got to talk about this a little bit last time when you called too, last year, which is just talking about representation. Nikki, of course, is a lesbian, and I think that's wonderful. That like every piece of media, right? Like everybody's saying, everything on Netflix, everything on Hulu, it all has gay stuff in it now. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. It's great. It's cool. Like, what do you mean? Like 99% of human media that's ever been produced has been about like straight people doing stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, well, like, yeah, it's going to be for a little bit now. We're going to have sort of an uptick in this content, and maybe hopefully in the future, I don't know, it'll just be, there'll be so much stuff out there you're not even going to be able to really care. Like if you're really not into that, if you're still homophobic, like there's so many options for you. Take your pick, right? But it's like, yeah, I'm so happy when I hear folks like yourself, Tim, talk about that kind of representation. That's, again, as a guy who is a cis straight white dude, it's like, yeah, I want everybody else that I know that doesn't look like me to have stuff and movies and plots about them. And I love what you said about characters not being tragic either. That is such a big stereotype, right? Or the Barry the gay stereotype, right? Where it's just like, the character has to die in the movie or something. It's really crazy seeing the difference there. But what do you think, Nikki?
Oh, I agree. Of course, the flip side of that is always the Christian community thinks it's some type of agenda rather than just understanding that we do exist as well. Yeah. And having us in movies isn't an agenda. We exist in your life. We play a role in your life, and life imitates art. So there should be no reason for us to be present in the art as well.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Beautiful way to put it. Yeah. Tim, what else do you think about that?
And I think it's really interesting that the problem that the Christian wrong has with the whole thing is that they think it's horrible that a PG movie has this character who is flirting with his friend, right? It's horrible. It's almost tantamount to gay porn. It's okay for like Eric and Prince Eric and Ariel to kiss, but it's not okay for these two boys to kind of flirt and Diazo to grab the hat off of Ethan's head and they flirt around a little bit. It's not okay for that, but it's quite okay for these kids to see a straight couple kiss. And I mean, I'm not against a straight couple kissing on television, right? But at the same time, you can't say that just a little boyish flirtation is tantamount to gay porn, you know?
Right.
And
it's ridiculous.
What upsets me is we can't. One of the coolest things about Heartstopper is that these characters, Nick and Charlie, are the only thing they do is kiss on TV. You don't see them getting naked with each other. You see these two teenagers who are falling in love. And the same kind of thing happens with Strange World. You see these two kids flirting with each other and having just that sweet little beginning of crushdom into I might be falling for you type thing. And it was so cute to watch. And I just had to say that we need more representation like that. We in the LGBTQ community need more representation like that.
Tim, I can just tell how excited you are just by the tone of your voice when you're describing this stuff. I mean, obviously you're interested because you called into the show about it, but it's like that just makes me so happy because one, for those of you who don't know, Tim has told his story before, but Tim has was in the closet for a long time and like lived, you know, a lot of your life like that. And it's like that's so great that now you get to see how different society has changed, like to allow for these kinds of stories to be told. Stuff, I mean, the teenage romances have been a thing forever. Any Christian conservative that's like, oh, this is pornography, it's like, okay, so is like every single teen romance movie ever. Like it's just like you know, whatever, like they're not having sex on screen or anything, like you said, right? It's just like kids flirting with each other, which is like what teenagers do. Like if you're ever a teenager who was into that, I mean, like obviously asexual community not included, maybe. Well, maybe, I mean, well, actually that's not true because there's flirting there that happens too in you know, in different ways. But like, you know, point is, right, anybody who is looking at this and is saying, oh, this is grooming, this is pornographic, this is disturbing, it's just like, no, you just are so privileged in your experiences that you didn't actually get to see any of this happening yourself, but this is the experiences of millions of people, not just today, but historically, and it has always happened, but these stories were just never told because folks like yourself has said, this is weird, this is gross, and you know, get this out of my face. And now the world is changing, and for the better in that regard, at least, right? Yeah. Right. What do you think, Nikki?
Yeah, and it's just.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
For me.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
As a former fundamentalist, for me as a former fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian who was also an ex-gay minister, stories like this really do mean a lot. I mean, I weep I watch Heartstopper probably on the regular. I've rewatched it. I can't even tell you how many times and it makes me cry every single time because it's like these kids growing up now get to see Nick and Charlie and this wonderful little romance that they have. And now they have Disney's movie Strange World where this kid he's an adventurer. He gets out there and he's killing bad guys with his dad and grandpa and he's having an adventure and he likes his best friend Diazo. And for me, it's like say if my grandson decides that he likes boys and he's 14 now and he likes boys, he's actually got all of these wonderful role models that are his age in the media. And it just makes me so happy that queer representation is going from tragic and evil to just a thing. It's just a thing. And I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. People who just don't understand why this is good. Again, I cite the fact that they just have lived a narrow, privileged life, right? Privileged in the sense that they've never had their love or their romances or the people that they like discriminated against or their stories not have the chance to be told because they were straight. That's never happened, right? Never happened in our world. But now that we do get to have these queer romances on screen, it is a net good, I think. So it's really awesome. Tim, we got to let you go because we need to get this show moving. But thank you so much for calling in, and I do
Thanks, Tim.
appreciate you giving your perspective. And so I think we have a promo that we'll get to in just a second. But before we do, I want to tell you guys about how you can support the show. If you want to support it, again, I mentioned Patreon. It's tiny.cc/PatreonTW. And there's a couple different tiers there, and you also get your name shouted out during the show if you donate. I want to clarify as well, because we had a couple of emails, okay? We are still recording some of these bonus calls after the show. We have not released any yet on Patreon. We want to kind of test this thing out first and see if we're going to go with it. And also we want to get a little bit of a reservoir here. So please don't subscribe to the Patreon if you want to get access to the bonus calls yet. We have not put that content on there. I will let you know when it's there, but I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking that you'll get access to that. We'll hopefully be able to release that in the near future. But regardless, a couple other ways to support the show. You can become a member. If you do that, you can get emojis in the chat and your name gets highlighted in the chat. And you can do that for as little as 99 cents a month. So you should definitely check that out if you haven't already. And of course, if you shop on Amazon, you can support the ACA at no additional cost to you. You just have to visit tiny.cc/AmazonSmileACA and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity. And Amazon will donate a portion of the profit directly to the ACA. So it's a win-win situation. So check that out if you are interested. And now we are going to play a quick promo for you guys talking about some of the other shows we have here at the ACA. Check it out.
What has your experience been? What tips can you give? What does it look like for somebody who's maybe just getting started? And
I can always give more than just the tip.
Right,
yes.
thank you.
You know, I mean, we've always been taught about the great I am. And,
Of course, yeah, we've been crying.
But where the hell did this come from?
Drugs.
Yeah, drugs.
Drugs.
Like,
Maybe it's my good looks. I don't know. They feel like they always need to tell me about Jesus. And
Not your good look.
And it's not. No, it's definitely not. They're trying to keep themselves. They're just praying.
You just have that face that you need to be saved, honey.
even then, Ben, atheists on Twitter will argue all day about, do we lack a belief? Do we claim that a God isn't real? You know, like there's even semantics there as to what actually an atheist even is.
I didn't get to meet myself until I was in my 20s. And I hope that today's kids get options before that to really meet themselves while they're young. So you can have your closed-minded ideas, but I don't think that it's improving anything, and the data shows that.
And we are back to Truth Wanted. Welcome back to the show. I am here with Nikki, Beat the Cult, and Nikki. And you do not like Nikki the Skeptic anymore? Is that just?
Oh, I like Skeptic Nikki. It was just
Skeptic Nikki. Sorry. Yeah, I remember because here's the thing. You don't remember this. I messaged you like 2 or 3 years ago to be on the show. I think when you were still Skeptic Nikki, and you left me on red.
Really?
Yes, you did.
My gosh.
I remember this, Nikki. And then
That's
I don't know
crazy.
why I decided to try to contact you again last year, and then you responded. So I don't know what it was. Maybe it wasn't cool enough for you, but I'm glad that you're here now.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. I've always wanted to do an ACA show. This has been honestly a dream of mine for quite some time. So thank you for reaching out again. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
No, I know you
last time.
I get it. It's fine. I'm just giving you a hard time. Nikki, I'm glad that you're here. We're gonna go ahead and talk to some more folks at home too. We are gonna try this call. We have the Unworthy Emanual calling in from Texas. The Unworthy Emanual, you are live on Truth
Emanuel?
Wanted. What's up?
Emanuel, is that you?
Hello? Hello, Jack.
Hi. Is that
Hi,
you?
how are you?
Yeah, I just spoke with Nikki the other day. It was
Hi, Emanuel. Hi. Yeah, Jimmy told me that Jimmy told me that you told him you ruined his life, or he ruined your. Wait, Jimmy said that he ruined. You said Jimmy ruined your life. That's what he said.
Jimmy. Yeah, I was just being sarcastic and joking.
I know.
They thought it was like serious and stuff, and he just.
I know.
And I was like, what?
Jimmy's.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm totally missing this context here, but I'm glad that you're calling into this show. I guess you were on a different call-in show a few days ago. Is that what happened?
I was on with Jimmy.
Yeah, it was on the line. Yeah.
On
Okay,
the line.
gotcha.
And
Okay,
Emanuel
gotcha.
called in, and yeah, it's.
All right, Emanuel. Now you're on Truth Wanted. So what do you want to talk to us about?
Yeah, I just want to talk about constitutional flaw. You know, I'm not American, so there was a Constitution article in the American Constitution that's similar with the home country that I grew up. And I thought that
Ethiopia,
amendment, I'm sorry?
Ethiopia?
Yeah, it's kind of similar. You know, in Ethiopia, we have like an article that says separation of church and state, right? So I don't actually agree that we need a secular state. So I think, you know, if this was a majority atheist country or a majority agnostic country, then it should be led by a secular constitution or secular law. But if this is a majority Christian country, it's got to be led by the church. So, just like a Muslim country is led by a Sharia law, when it comes to Christian country, a majority of people are Christians. Oh, suddenly it's got to be like a secular faith. I don't actually understand it. It doesn't make sense to me, you know.
Let me explain. That is a hot take, Emanuel. That's spicy. That's a spicy take right there. Let me explain why the separation of church and state is incredibly important. Okay. Now, America, ironically, doesn't, you know, it's funny because other countries like the United Kingdom, for example, do not have a constitution that requires the separation of church and state. In fact, as a lot of government money actually goes to church institutions, and yet the England as a whole is less religious than the United States. Kind of a weird thing. But politicians in this country will still use religion, of course, to, you know, mobilize a base, get people going, because they know what wedge issues are in those communities, like abortion, for example, and will try to get people to the polls. That being said, the fact that we do have the separation of church and state means that we do not get to live under the majority of Christian rule as a tyranny, okay? If you let some people, particularly Christian nationalists in this country, right, or people who espouse Christian nationalist beliefs, even if they don't call themselves that, they would put their rules, their ideas of religious liberty, their ideas of marriage, their ideas of what a woman should be, their ideas of you know, everything you can think of on the rest of the people in this country who aren't Christian, right? And so that's a problem for me because I'm not a Christian, right? And I would say it is a problem also for folks that do live under Sharia law who are not Muslim. And even if they are Muslim, even if they are Christian, they are still subject to these to these hypothetical laws, right, that could happen that would negate their freedoms ultimately, right? Like if it were up to Christian nationalists, like if they were still in power, like if they came into power during the time of the forming of this country, women would not have the right to vote right now, right? Like that's not something that they would want. Abortion access in this country is being threatened by people who have religious views that want to subjugate others to those religious views, even though they may not hold. I mean, this covers a wide variety of topics here. And it's one of the things why an organization like the Atheist Community of Austin exists, so that we can promote why the separation of church and state is good, not just for Christians, not just for atheists, but for everybody who cares about individual liberties and freedom. Really free, like the most American thing ever, right? So anyway.
And which Christians are making the laws? Because if you ask my mom if abortion should be legal, she would say absolutely not. But if you ask my aunt, she would say it would, or it should be, and they're both Christians. So which Christians get to actually enact these laws? Who do we listen to?
So there you go, Emanuel. What do you think?
Here's the thing. Yeah, I gotta, you said you keep like pointing to the negative stuff, but I don't know why you think this is a negative idea where a rabbi actually said, share your money with people, or, respond good.
It's not a Christian nationalist idea.
And all of the things, you gotta throw all that out, and you just gotta pick what's the definition of marriage or whatever. Maybe me and you might disagree what a marriage is, but so you said what kind of Christian do you think? I mean, I gotta say, a Christianity that's true is just like, it's like an umbrella that qualifies for all Christianity. For example, what I think is, if we have laws that are ruled under the rules of Christianity, I think the majority of Christians will agree, will have a common ground.
Oh, no, they won't.
Well, I disagree.
I don't think there's any
no.
Emmanuel, let me tell you why.
My brother is a Christian, and my brother is a gay man. My brother is a Christian, and my brother is a gay man. So how do you think he would vote or set up laws? See, being a Christian is not a monolith. People who are Christians have different ideas and different views. And that is kind of the beauty of it, but also the curse as well, because people claim that their ideals represent the whole group of Christians as a entirely, but they actually don't.
Yeah. So right now, and I'm not talking about, listen, Emmanuel, I'm not talking about in the past. Right now, it is technically still illegal for 7 different states. 7 different states have bans on atheists holding office. Okay. Now, whether it would actually come to that in a court of law, what the Supreme Court would rule on, it probably wouldn't hold up. But the fact is, there is a precedent of Christians like in this country, and it's the history of America. America has always been, at least in a majority power, a Christian nation. Now, when I say that, right, obviously there's a book about, Andrew Seidel talked about like why it actually isn't a Christian nation, but like he's talking about some of the individual founders' beliefs. I'm talking about as a mobilizing political force, right? What people have really enacted into law. Christians have had such a huge power, such a huge influence. And yeah, do Christians do good things for people? Obviously. Okay, sure. But the thing is, anybody can do good things for people. The negative stuff that we're talking about are unique to religious perspectives. Get this. What atheist out there is going to ban gay marriage? Why would they do that?
Some might.
I mean, maybe, but like vast majority, right? That's not going to happen. Same thing with like abortion care, right? Like most atheists are in support of that kind of healthcare. I mean, like there's all kinds of progressive statutes that would be in place for a secular government to have that benefits everybody, not just atheists, but benefits everyone who cares about wanting and having these individual liberties that, quite frankly, a Christian nationalist nation, if they stuck to their guns, would not allow, wouldn't want. So
also, why is it the government's business who gets an abortion, who gets married, who they marry? That's not the government's business at all.
Yeah. Anyway, long answers from us. Go ahead.
Here's the thing, right? I'm not saying you can't really be an atheist in a Christian law. It's like there are things that should not be permitted that I think me and you might disagree. Like, can I give a...
Emanuel, are you still there? I think you cut out. Hello?
Okay. Can I give an example?
Sure. Sure. Go ahead.
So one time there was a guy that he was half Jewish and he was half I think midnight or something like that, and he blasphemed against God, right? So God told Moses that they should stone him to death because he has spit out the holy name, right? So there are laws, or there are things that are in the New Testament, Old Testament, that are given to community as a whole. So the Bible was not written for individual purposes or individual beliefs. It talks about a community that should rely on that belief.
Do you want to live in a community that stones people? I'm confused why you're using this story.
Holy fucking Christ. All right. Should I be stoned?
No, because we are under the New Testament. So
why bring it up then?
What I'm saying, I'm sorry.
What I'm trying to understand your point. You're saying that we're not under these laws anymore because this was the laws established for these communities. What does that have to do with us today?
In bringing up that one particular story about Moses punishing or stoning someone who cursed God's name, but then also saying simultaneously that these laws are not just for that person, but for others as well.
Yeah. What she said.
Yeah, and there are also ideas in the Old and New Testament that you have to keep your land holy. So we don't want to see unclean things going around where we're living. It's really, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't want to live.
I actually don't know what you're saying, to be honest, Emmanuel. I feel like, look, here's the thing. The stoning thing you just mentioned is a terrible story. Like, I don't want to live in that community. I don't want to be governed by a community that thinks that that's a good thing or ever thought that was a good thing. Okay. Or justifies that in some sort of way. I mean, that's the perfect example. You couldn't have given a worst example for our point, right? Like, listen, and people, and the Salem witch trials, if anything, have shown that, like, if you given enough control and power, a group will kill other people for being an outsider, right? For acting against the perceived order, right? The hierarchy. And like, that's what Christianity is. It is a hierarchy, right? It is telling people that Christians are more pure, more aligned morally with that of God, and God is supposed to be ultimate. And whereas I'm just a dirty sinner. And like, I think a Christian majority nation that actually followed through with that logic would not be good for me and wouldn't be good for other people who aren't Christians.
It wouldn't be good for Christians themselves. They do some pretty horrific things. Like, if we actually stoned adulterers, 90% of Congress would be just done away with.
It's true.
So
very true.
We wouldn't.
Okay. Here's the thing, Dan. I'm not saying you should believe in God or you should be forced to believe in God. I'm just saying you shouldn't blaspheme against God, and you shouldn't be allowed to blaspheme against God. We gotta have a restriction on freedom.
Emmanuel, you know what I say to that? I say, fuck you. I say, I will blaspheme God all the goddamn day. You don't get to tell me shit. You know why? Because I live in America, motherfucker. I get freedom of speech. Okay, this is like. No, I
come down and say it. Is the Christian God so weak and so sensitive that he can't deal with a few cross words, that he has to start stoning people that talk shit to him? And have them come down and say that to my face.
I'm not saying you should be stoned. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not saying you should be stoned. And if in the case of being stoned, I deserve to be stoned. I don't believe I deserve to leave, right? It's because Jesus died.
Emmanuel, we've had some weird conversations about what you think about yourself and how you would
I don't think you should.
Slave.
I'm sorry. Things. We're interrupting you, and we don't. I don't mean to do that, but like I get what you're saying. You believe, you have a belief system, right, that says that all people are sinners and therefore all people are worthy of death, right? Like, that is the belief system. The thing is,
I don't worthy of death.
Sure.
Because the punishment of sin is death. Right?
Yes, I understand that. I don't believe that though.
Okay.
But you understand though, Emmanuel? I don't believe that. And wait, let me finish here. I don't believe that, and I don't think you should be judge, jury, and executioner on that either. I don't think other Christians should be able to do that either. The fact is, they were. You just brought up an example of how they did a horrific story of a woman that got stoned, and that's supposed to be God's law. that they're following, right?
Today.
So it's like, if we're, I mean, like I know you probably don't personally believe in stoning, but the fact is that group of people did, and people are still today, modern Christians in this country, maybe they're not going to stone people to death, but they are going to horribly discriminate against those who don't have the same kinds of beliefs, whether it's not selling a cake to somebody or just like death. I mean, people do die. Let's be real. There are hate crimes that are committed in the act of Christianity, and that's just the fact. Like I can't. The fact that you believe that all humans have this sin to them, and that we should actualize on that doesn't give you the right to put that on everyone else that doesn't think the same way. It really doesn't. So,
Dan, I'm not saying let's stone people who blaspheme God. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, here's the thing, right?
But you think I should what? You think I should be jailed? Do you think I should be fined? Like, why do you think I need to be punished for that?
You should be
like,
you should be fined. That would be a good.
It's like a government swear jar or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Like I had to pay $300 or something for every time.
Put it into the
like
swear
a parking
jar,
ticket. Yeah.
Put it into the blaspheme jar.
That I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm a better righteous guy than you. We're all sinners. That's what I believe, right? If you break one of God's laws, you're a sinner automatically, right? So
I'm not a sinner.
Jesus paid the price. Jesus paid the price of death for you to be free. So I'm not saying you should die because
no, he didn't.
What's the point of you dying?
Jesus didn't pay the price for sin because sin isn't a thing.
Look, again, I understand that you believe that, but I don't. Yep. So it really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
No. I just want to clear up to you. I'm not saying you deserve that. I'm not saying that.
Wait, you do. You literally just said I deserve death under the eyes of God. You're just saying you won't kill me, but you're saying God has a right to kill me.
God has a right to kill you, but I don't have a right to kill you.
So I am worthy of death.
Of human lives. So am I. I'm also worthy of death.
But that doesn't listen. But for some reason, that gave somebody the right to stone somebody to death at some point in time. And that kind of mentality, it has happened and it will happen again if people have that kind of power. Listen, Emmanuel, we've got some other people we got to talk to. I'm sorry, we've been on this call for a bit, but we got to let you go. I sincerely do appreciate you calling in and giving your perspective. Okay, that's a spicy take. Okay, and I like the spice, but let's talk about this a different time. Maybe can you call in next week, and maybe I'll have a different host, and we can continue this conversation. How does that sound?
I will.
Good to talk to you again. Bye.
God bless you, man.
All right, have a good one.
Bye, man.
Listen, most Christians I know before the last couple of years, I think would agree that the separation of church and state is a good thing. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty bipartisan agreement, except for like the really fundamentalists,
I know a lot of people that wish that the country was a theocracy, but the problem is that Christians don't all have the same ideas. And every time people say that Christianity provides this objective morality, I always give this one example: my mom and my aunt and abortion. That one example completely negates that statement that Christianity provides for objective morality, and a Christian theocracy would be agreed upon by all Christians, and how it was executed would be agreed upon. It's just not true.
It's not true. It has never been true, and that's true for any religious body. That's true for any political party and political institution, by the way, too. Like you listen. You want to know the people who argue the most? Fucking like Marxists and communists. Okay, like they always talk about which is the real communist. And I mean, like with like libertarian circles, you can do this for Republican and Democrat circles. I mean, like it's this kind of puritanism that happens always shows up in these conversations. So I'm not convinced that a Christian, I'm not convinced a Christian theocracy would solve any of that.
No, probably make things more contentious.
But, but of course, right, if you're a Christian, you're interested in a Christian theocracy. Imagine my shock, right? Imagine
your version of a Christian theocracy, right? Because even at the dinner table on Thanksgiving, it's can't even agree on that.
Yeah.
And that's within the same family. Try to get millions of people to come to a conclusion based on their Christian views.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah, I agree. But we gotta move on here, and I gotta plug some stuff really quickly. So as you know, there's a couple of different ACA shows that you should definitely check out. And some of those shows are in fact live, and once a month we are committed to, or at least trying to commit. So far, we've been doing a pretty good job of doing a live show for Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, and Truth Wanted. We are going to be doing that this month as well. If we have the dates for that to put on screen, that would be great. There we go. We got Thursday, January 26th, Secular Sexuality. Friday, January 27th is going to be Truth Wanted. Both of those doors open at 6, show starts at 7. And then Sunday, January 29th, Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience will be there. Doors open for that at noon. And those are going to be at the ACA Free Thought Library. These are in-person events, and these are completely free. So if you're in the Austin area and you want to check it out, come on down. And I'm going to be hosting a couple of those too. So if you like me and you want to meet me in person, that's a good way to do it. So check those out if you are interested. I also want to let you guys know about ways you can contact the show. One of them is through the email address. It's truth@atheist-community.org. You can also reach out to the ACA. It's tv@atheist-community.org and see what's going on our website. It's, guess what it is, atheist-community.org. So check those things out. And lastly, but not leastly, I guess, there is a Facebook group. It's run by fans for fans, so check that out. It's tiny.cc/FBTWG to interact with other fans of the show, talk about funny stuff, stupid stuff, how goofy I look on screen. You know, I see it all. So all of you guys who are on that group, thanks for posting on there, and thanks to everybody for doing that. Also, I'm going to plug this real quick too. We have merchandise, okay? We are doing the t-shirt of the month. Of course, this one was a design that I came up with, and our awesome executive producer Greg made into a t-shirt. It was, I was abducted. The shirt says, I was abducted by aliens, and all I got was this t-shirt. So I think it's cool. We also got all the regular Truth Wanted stuff in there. So check that out if you want to represent. And if you do buy merch and you're on Twitter, please tag me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan wearing your merch. That would be really, really cool. We're also going to try to do an after show today. So stick around and we'll talk to you guys in the Discord in a little bit. If we don't get to a bonus call, or maybe after we get to a bonus call too, we'll see if we have enough calls for that. If not, we'll go straight to the after show. And with all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get to our next call here. We have John, who is calling in from Canada. Now, John, I wanted to take a break from talking to you, John, because you've called into this show several times, and some people were complaining. Some people didn't like it. But, John, last time you called in, you were very polite and very respectful, and you only asked questions. And you know what? I have to give you props for that. So thank you for that, John. And for that, I want to, well, give me a chance to talk to us again. What's going on, John?
Okay. I'd like to know, if you are so sure that God does not exist, I'd like to know why you were angry at him.
Who said that God didn't exist? I'm sorry. I wasn't here for previous shows. Did someone say God didn't exist?
I mean, so, you know, that's a good point, right, Nikki? Atheists will identify this issue differently, but not everyone says that God doesn't exist.
I don't say that.
A lot of them will just say they don't really have a good enough reason to believe in any particular God, right? So those are kind of two different things. It's hard to prove a negative. You really can't do that. I can't say, oh, well, there absolutely isn't a teapot orbiting Mars right now. I mean, there could be, but like, why would I believe that, right? So there's no real reason for me to.
John, I don't say that God doesn't exist.
Yeah. So that's how we keep it that. As far as why we're angry about it, I'll answer that too.
Specifically.
It's not the God that we care about. I mean, like, we talk about the figure of God in Christianity and if they were real, how we would judge their actions to be bad. It's the people that believe in him that do the stuff that we don't like. Okay, and that's not even to say that Christians are bad. I don't believe that inherently, but the beliefs, the conclusions that you can come to based on the belief that a God is real, and the religion that follows from that can lead to terrible things. And that's been shown time and time again. Yeah, like getting stoned, right? So, but not like the good kind of stoned, the bad kind of stoned. So, anyway, does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, but I want to give you proof of God's existence.
Oh, cool. Great. Okay.
All right, John. Go ahead.
I've been waiting
Let's hear
for
it.
this.
You want to know what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the American family.
Ugh, that's not a good start, John.
What are you? John? You're Canadian.
I didn't even read that.
What do you mean?
That is so funny. I didn't even think
John, what do you mean? What do you mean right now? Please tell me.
Maybe John is.
Well, okay, listen to me. You need a mother and a father to come together to produce children, and when that happens, when you work together, you produce a good child that's a productive member of society, and will do good things for the world. Now, tell me, doesn't that scream design? Imagine how much effort goes into it.
John, what does that have to do?
Family, that would smash your whole hypothesis. If you spent 2 minutes with my family, you would completely change that perspective.
John, I think you're trolling me right now. Are you trolling me right now, John? Because
I'm not trolling you.
What does that have to do with America? What?
You guys are the best country in the world. You should be proud of yourself, and it's because you have.
Ooh, I'm feeling Justin Trudeau on you.
Wait, but what does that have to do with the family? That family structure can exist outside of America. Yeah, and how does the existence of a mother, a father, and a child have anything to do with a God? Like just because you like it?
Because someone had to put it together.
No, nobody had to put that together. What do you mean? Why does somebody have to put that together?
So weird.
Okay, do you really think that a person can come into existence by themselves?
We never said that it came into existence by itself. It's not something that I've ever said.
It's not even what you said, John.
John, are you okay? Hello?
Family is the cornerstone of society. I'm fine.
Okay, you're acting weird tonight, John. I don't know what to say to this. You're weirding me out. Like this is weirder than even some of the stuff you told me before. Like what does the American family being the cornerstone of society have anything to do with God? I really do not see the connection. I mean, are you saying because you find it hard to believe that people could come from nothing? Because that's not what we think. I think people came from chemical processes, but that's not nothing, right?
Also,
there is a
what does that have to do with the fucked up people who live in America?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go more into detail. The family is now under attack. Is being destroyed by the idea that a child can be raised by a single parent or two of the same gender, and that's why you're seeing lots of crime in the world and misery. If we go back to
I'd love to see the statistics on that, John.
High school graduations. What?
John, you think there was crime in the world? There was crime in the world before gay families existed, or two parents of the same gender were ever really a thing. I mean, obviously they've always been kind of a thing, but more popularized now. That has nothing to do with crime.
Single parent homes, the kids are more likely to commit crimes, but that has nothing to do with God. And I really don't know why you would say that the nuclear family is evidence of God. Do you have something a little bit better than that? I'm a little disappointed, John. I was hoping
that mother and father are necessary to be together. It's
all right, John. I'm letting you go. I'm disappointed. No, I'm disappointed, John. This is out of all the times I've been able to talk with you, this is the lowest quality of conversation.
Really?
I think you're just trolling at this point. I gave you a chance this time because last time we talked to you, it was actually fairly pleasant. I was genuinely shocked. But like this is I don't know.
John's back to his old self.
We need new material. I don't know. I have nothing else to say to that. It's just completely asinine. Has nothing to do with anything.
Sure.
I'm moving on. Moving on. We'll talk to our next guest here. I say guest. Next caller here. We have Jim. Jim, who's talking to us from New Jersey. Jim, what's going on?
Hi, Jim.
Hello there.
Hello.
I actually called in some time ago with Rob Boss or Bob Ross. Basically,
my cousin, Rob Boss.
But basically, it was just about like how like being a Christian and like the Christian faith, it doesn't make somebody stupid. Like being
I agree with that.
Putting your faith. What was that?
I agree. Being a Christian does not make somebody stupid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so like, cool. Like, so basically, like my explanation of why, you know, like saying like putting your faith in Jesus, you know, for the forgiveness of your sins, believing that God is holy, and knowing that you would need forgiveness, and you put your faith in the Son because he was without sin, and that he would save you. You know, to me, that just sounds like something really smart to do, right? It's not the smartest thing to do. It's just like the base of something that would be intelligent to prevent you from receiving, you know, punishment and wrath, and doing that because there's a promise that you would have everlasting life. So
I don't believe that.
I think that. What was that?
I don't believe that.
Well, you don't think that it would be a smart thing to do? Yeah, I understand. Like,
no, I just don't believe that.
You don't believe that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, like I think like you don't believe like that the God of the Bible is holy, but like
I don't see evidence the God of the Bible exists to begin with.
Yeah, Jim's calling. You know, I think Jim's an atheist, right? And Jim's kind of pointing out the
That's
you know,
interesting.
Jim's kind of saying, look, like being a Christian, right? There's a lot of social benefits that come with that, right? So like,
I was thinking he was okay.
No, yeah, Jim. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I believe what you're saying is right. Like being a Christian isn't. I mean, I say this all the time. It's not always about accepting philosophical premises as true or false, right? It's about the social cohesion that comes with it, this sense of identity, the you know, the pro-social benefits that come with being a community of like-minded people. That can, you know, it might not make you stupid, but it can make you biased in a way, right? And it can make you it's sort of harder to come to may make it harder to do critical thinking in some areas, right? It's harder to criticize a group of people that you're a part of than it is when you're on the outside, right? So like it doesn't make you stupid, but it can make you biased. It can make it harder for you to think critically about especially particular beliefs in institutions that Christianity brings. For example, the beliefs that they have between the differences of men and women, right? And instituting those kinds of hierarchies, the differences and what you should do in a spiritual life, what's considered wrong or immoral versus, you know, what's perfectly acceptable. So yeah, I think I see your point. Was that kind of what you're saying, Jim?
Well, I was basically just saying that just the foundational faith doesn't make you stupid. Like just doing that specific faith is not against reason itself. But also I do agree that like being a part of a religion that you aren't really, you know, and understanding everything about it, you know, you definitely can be drawn to just kind of agree and stand for certain things and you know, not really think critically about it because you just want to stand with what you are aware is, the beliefs of your social, your church, your belief system. But I also think,
in other words, I added a bunch of stuff to what you said, but that's okay. Oh, you are a Christian. Oh, okay. Never mind. I was wrong. I was totally wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong about what you said, and I was wrong about your belief position. So forgive me. But anyway, okay. So now I got a better perspective on that. Nikki, did you have any thoughts?
Oh no, so that would make more sense as to why you were saying it would be smart to accept the message of Christ. I just don't believe it, and I would say I don't see evidence that the Christian God is real, but maybe you could pick up where John left off and maybe provide some evidence for that, or do a better job than John
evidence
did.
for God.
The Christian God, yeah.
I cannot. I cannot prove that God exists before. Like the Bible. I think the Bible teaches that actually you can't prove God exists. Well, like it says that no man has seen God at any time.
But Romans 1 also says that God is evident in the environment as well. And no man is without
things of him from the creation.
Mm-hmm.
The invisible things from the creation of the world have been clearly seen by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhood. So they're without excuse. So
without excuse.
But there has been no actual real thing to see of God. But the Bible does teach that everybody knows God exists just by the definition of the one in whom we live, move, and have our being in.
Didn't God show himself to Moses?
Glory shot. Yes, he did talk to Moses.
Didn't he show himself though?
Moses,
Adam and Eve.
The Bible pretty much says that no, that was it said that the Spirit of God walked with them in the garden. But the Spirit is not.
Presumably but like Jacob wrestled with God.
Yeah,
right?
He did. And he removed his hip.
Yeah.
Or dislocated it. Sorry.
That was a man though.
Yeah, but God was incarnating as
but it was
a man.
God, right? See, it's an interesting verse because it's one of those and I know the one you're talking about, right? That nobody has seen the face of God. It's a weird one because there's so many Old Testament stories where people have seen God, where God is just like a dude that's just there. I don't know. That's a side point, Jim. That's a side point. We're kind of getting to the tail end of the show, so let's hone in on this. You say that you can't prove that God isn't real, right? Or that you don't believe that it's possible to prove that God is real. Okay, fair enough. If that's the case, why do you believe? What convinces you that God is real as opposed to isn't? Because I could say a lot of things are real, but you can't prove it's real, right? I could say, oh, I think that there's invisible unicorns around us. I can't prove it to you, but that's something I believe. It kind of makes you wonder, right? Okay, well, why would I believe that? Right, if I can't demonstrate it to be true. So this is what I'm wondering for you, Jim. If you can't prove that it's real or you can't demonstrate anything to the truthness of it, why believe it in the first place?
Well, I know that I cannot objectively show you the face of God.
Okay, that's fine.
I believe that, but when it comes to knowing God by His Spirit, I believe that I can show that that's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It says, it says that no man has seen God at any time, but the only begotten of the Father, the only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, He hath declared Him. So when we receive Jesus, then we receive God's Spirit, and then we can actually see, God in that way and know Him in that way.
Okay, so don't even worry about convincing me, right? Don't even worry about convincing me. What convinces you? Why are you convinced? Are you convinced because you've been received in the Spirit? Is that why?
That sounds so dirty.
What?
It's just the way Dan said it. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm being a child. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just convinced that I was a sinner, and I always believed, I always knew of God, as the creator. I always knew of him as that light. And
how did you know?
And I believe that.
That's a good question.
How did you
know? I just knew that there was something more in goodness, in good. I just knew that he was good always.
But how did you know? How did you know that was God? I mean, right? Because you can believe that there's something more, but it doesn't have to be God, right?
Good always? I don't think there could be.
God is good always. Even God himself says he's not good always.
But also, right, there's like other conceptions of like higher forces of good, right? Like if you look at like Zoroastrianism, for example, if you look at like Ahuda Mazda, right, which is like the supreme spirit of goodness, right? You know, like that's an example of a belief system that I could show you where somebody has a belief of something always being good. So my question is, right, like what in your experience made you convinced of this Christian conception of God, or even just the higher good in general? Like what in your experience leads you to that?
Like, it does start with like it's with Jesus. Like I believed that I needed a savior for love and for the forgiveness of my sins. Like I needed to be saved by the love of God, and like I deserved to die, and I just needed.
What is with this "I deserve to die" thing today?
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about deserving death, right?
Man, I don't like the way Christianity's making people feel about themselves. That's a big issue I have with it. Like this self-deprecating belief of deserving to die for things that you can't help. I mean, Christianity gaslights people for basically being human. If you look upon your neighbor's wife with lust, even though she's out in the front yard wearing tight yoga pants doing gardening, that makes you a sinner and you deserve to die for that?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if it's an ungodly thing, if it's because that's a disrespectful thing, is it not?
No.
To be objectifying somebody?
It's not objectifying. She's just attractive. She's a beautiful woman. She's wearing her Victoria's Secret yoga pants. She's in the front yard gardening. That is not a problem. It's not objectifying. She's just an attractive woman. It's not a problem to look at it. It's not a problem. Oh,
you're
I just canceled myself.
And making
Okay. Nikki, listen. Here's Jim. Don't take it personally. Nikki just saw her neighbor a little while ago, and has just still been thinking about her. And she
was wearing a very tight black dress.
She's a little distracted right now. I think that's what's happening. Anyway, Jim.
Sorry, Jim.
We gotta wrap. We are at the tail end of the show.
Basically, it's not your fault. That's like a logical thing. That was my point. I was trying to.
Jim, when I'm asking about your experiences, when I'm asking about your reasons to believe, I'm hearing a lot of Christian beliefs. Like I'm hearing you say, well, I'm a sinner and I deserve this, and I believe that I need a savior. And I'm just, what I'm wanting to get to is starting from the conclusion, right? Because this works for you in a way, right? You already have some of these Christian beliefs, but presumably at some point in your life you weren't a Christian, right? Like even if you were just a younger kid, right? Like you have to learn about these things, right? Like nobody is born with this knowledge of Christianity, right? Like maybe you would agree with that. So how do we get there? I'm wondering how we get from point A to point B, because for Nikki and I both, I don't know if you know this about us, Jim, we both grew up as Christians. We were both professing Christians, came from Christian families, both went to church, were very involved. And when we thought about our beliefs and we thought about the reasons why we believed, we realized that they weren't good reasons. And maybe there are good reasons to believe, but we didn't like the reasons that we came to. Right? So in my point in asking these questions is, what are your reasons for belief? What conclusions did you come to get to your belief, if any? Or if you didn't, and you just want to say you didn't, that's honest too. I don't know. Tell me, Jim.
I mean, there's many. I mean, the beliefs. I mean, basically, just imagine this didn't happen to me, but say like this can happen, right?
Yeah.
For somebody to become a Christian, somebody comes to their door and they hear the gospel, and then they say, that makes sense, and I want to believe.
Yeah.
Right. So the reason for believing would be because they believe that they have sinned and they need to believe, and then they will be born again.
But you see how that's not a reason? You see how that's...
Yeah, because that's a predisposition towards an already existing belief. So basically, I think, Dan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan is asking you, how did you even come to these conclusions originally? Because someone coming to your door with the gospel, that's not a fresh representation of the idea. You've heard these things before, and you bought into them either partially before you were, I guess, hypothetically ran into the person who came to your door. So I think what he's asking is, how did you hear these before? Why did they appeal to you at that time?
Yeah. I don't want to hear about a hypothetical. I want to know about you, Jim. Like, did you grow up as a Christian? Were you a part of the church? Did you convert later in life? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. I converted, or I believe I was saved when I was 26. I didn't really grow up in like a religious home, but I met a Christian girl, and then I dated and married her. So I was going to like a non-denominational church for like 5 years, but and I always felt like it was a good thing just because God's name. I didn't really believe Jesus was, God in the flesh and died for my sins or anything, but there was just one time where I just didn't trust in myself for love anymore, and then I looked to Jesus to save me, so I believe that his love was given to me, and I believe that it was through trusting in him to give me that new heart, to give me, and I believe that he needed to die for my sins because I was ungodly, and that he rose again for me because he is of the God.
Okay.
He is of God.
Okay. So in other words, Jim, and I'm not trying to rush you, we're at the end of the show. I just got to wrap things up. It sounds like, please correct me if I'm wrong, you had a religious experience. You had an experience with what you believed to be was Jesus in a low point in your life, and you believe that Jesus saved you from these sort of feelings of guilt, but also like, spiritually, like your soul has been saved because you accepted him into your heart. Is that kind of right?
It wasn't. I mean, it was definitely an experience. I don't think it was guilt, though. I don't think it was shame.
I use the word guilt. I pulled that. Yeah. No, I mean, like, it doesn't have to be guilt, but like you had an experience where you weren't living with God, and then you wanted to live in accordance with God, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I wanted him to. I wanted his love. Yeah.
Wanted his love.
Okay. Now, last point, last question. I promise this is the last one, and then we really got to go. Let's say, Jim. Let's say I come to you, and I tell you a story similar to yours, in that I was at a low point in my life, but then I met up with a religious congregation, and I accepted a different deity into my life, and that deity made a noticeable change in my life, right? That I accepted them, this other deity that's not Jesus, as my savior, and I said, look, I have this experience, and I became a believer after this moment. and I'm part of this church, that's this organization. Would this be convincing to you as to the truth of their beliefs? In other words, do you think that what they're saying would be convincing to you, or do you think it wouldn't affect you at all? Why or why not?
It all depends on what they're saying. But I mean, obviously, you know that. But I believe that the only true way to be saved would be so that it's not based on being good enough to receive God, but the only way would be to trust in Him for the forgiveness of your sins. And because we're never going to be good enough to please God if we don't have the faith.
I want to give you another chance. I don't think you really answered my question, right? Like, if I told you this story, would this be convincing to you to the truth of my beliefs, that this deity actually saved me and that I'm a changed person? Why or why not? Why would it be convincing, or why would it not be convincing?
Yeah, like if he's Muslim or something, like think of it from that perspective.
I could be a Muslim and say I've come to this. I'm trying to be as generic as possible, right? But say somebody comes to you with a religious experience, it's quite similar to yours, where they're at a low point in their life and they accepted this belief. I mean, is that going to be convincing to you? Is that going to convince you of the truth value of that belief in any meaningful way?
Well, I know about certain religions, and I can tell you that if somebody believes that they can work their way, like, I don't, what kind of experience? I would have to know.
Anything.
There's tons of experiences that, like, what about like the Kundalini?
Yeah.
People receive Kundalini and then they're all different, but
could be you having a meditation.
I know that the flesh.
You could be having a meditative experience, right? And you may hear the voice of Vishnu whisper into your ear, right? I literally heard a Hindu monk tell me that one time. I didn't make that up. That's a real story. Somebody told me.
Yeah.
My mom would say it's a demon.
The point I'm trying to make here, Jim, is that, and I got to let you go. I'm sorry. We're out of time. Is that your story? If I tell you that story, my take on it, right, is that's not going to be convincing to me. That's not going to be convincing to me if somebody else told me a story like that, because lots of people have religious experiences, right? Lots of people attribute supernatural or even natural forces to things that aren't actually there, and change their whole lives around that, change their ideologies, but that doesn't actually convince me of the truth value of those claims. And I would be interested, Jim, into seeing as to why your experience is so convincing to you as opposed to any other person's experience in the world. I would want to know what makes that different for yourself more than anybody else. But Jim, I gotta let you go now. Hopefully next time we can talk about this more. But I'm already over the time here. Sorry, I was letting him go on the call as he was speaking there. But thank you, Jim, for letting us have a chance to talk to you about your beliefs. I appreciate your honesty and integrity in a conversation like that, because it's not easy talking to two atheists on the line when you have a sincerely held belief like that. But look, we are way over time. I gotta wrap things up here. I want to thank Nikki, Beat the Cult / Skeptic Nikki / Nikki, for being on the show today. Nikki, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad that you got to be on. Nikki, where can people find you at if they want to see more of you?
They can find me on YouTube at Beat the Cult. I am starting to do some more debates and some more call-in shows. I also have a podcast that I release weekly. Of course, I got COVID this past week, so I didn't release it, but you can find me on YouTube at Beat the Cult. Additionally, you can find me on Twitter at Beat the Cult as well. I have started a Patreon, and you can find me, Beat the Cult, on Patreon, and I am in the process of relaunching my clothing store, which is beatthecult.com. But yeah, you can find me there. And if you want to chat with me, please let me know. I do not shy away from conversation at all. I do predominantly interact on Twitter, but please reach out if you have a request for a debate. I was on the Crucible last night, and Zen and Andrew are excellent and are all willing to set up debates with me if you'd like. So just let me know.
Cool. Cool. Thank you so much, Nikki, for that. We are going to do our bonus call right afterwards. So caller, if you're on the line, we are going to talk to you, but we are going to be doing that off air. And again, hopefully releasing that for content in the future. Again, none of that content is posted right now. Just want to clarify because we did get some emails on that. But hopefully it's something we'll release in the future. And if we don't end up doing it, we'll probably let you know about that too. But we are going to do that. Before we go, though, and get to that call and wrap up the show, I have to thank the wonderful, spectacular, stupendous, amazing crew that help make this show happen every single week. There is the crew cam. Look at those gentlemen that put up with me almost every week, most of the time. And they're good folks. They're good folks for doing it because I'm not easy to handle. I'm just all over the place sometimes. But hey, that is going to be it for tonight's episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between the Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.